think the bald heads from Shaolin are behind this. They're scared of nobody.
I inhaled.
Hello?
What's up, what's up, what's up? Welcome to Civil Intercourse with Tony P.
Well, hello, Mr. Fancy.
Are you pondering what I'm pondering?
I think it's great.
I hope you are in good health and that your spirit is well.
Your appeal to my humanity is pointless.
Come on, man.
We can meet our destiny to build a land here that will be for all mankind a shining city on a hill.
So if we all believe in individual liberty, and we all believe in these rules of democracy, what is our modern argument about?
And indeed, I do hope that this finds you in good health and good spirit. Happy New Year's, folks. We've made it. I'm putting the podcast out real quick. It's about 1:30 in the morning. And I just wanted to give a shout out and say Happy New Year to you. In this, I'm going to include a segment that we did a couple months back in October, right when we hit 38 trillion. We're still 38 trillion in debt. We had quite a few people look at that, but it's a really good segment, and I thought I'd throw it in here and let you take a listen after I say Happy New Year to you. And what do you want to talk about? I don't know if you guys have noticed it out there. There's a lot of negativity. There's a lot of propaganda and a lot of things being pushed, controlled opposition, all the things that we, the conspiracy theorist community, as they used to call it now, the people who are pay attention community, I guess we should call it. But we have a situation where there's a lot of team politic brain rot going on right now. And if you've ever listened to any of my podcasts, you know I'm about civility. You know I'm about bringing the communities together and figuring out what we agree on before we get to arguing about it. And so I've been thinking about what this product is that I'm doing and the time that I'm going to spend on social media and doing podcasts really needs to be focused on that. So I'm going to try to get back to where I started from. I've listened to all the podcasts a couple of times. It's not hard to do with all the breaks that I take and the lack of continuity that happens. But we went through different phases. I'm going to bring a couple people back in, but I kind of want to get back on my theme. I'm not saying I'm not going to join in spaces or be a part of those other projects. There's ways that I can contribute without being a part of the actual live show. So that stuff's still in play. But I need to personally get on brand and get on product and really start figuring out a way to make actionable things happen. With the recent suspension of my CIX cast, which is the handle for my Civil Intercourse podcast, and I'm still working on trying to get that back up. It's been an interesting endeavor. So I'm looking to Rumble and Spotify at this point, and just trying to start focusing on that route and try to maybe build, like I've always said from the beginning, it's not about quantity for me, it's about quality. And the thing that bothers me about my CIX cast is, so I only had about 1,000 users on there right now, but I've interacted with all 1,000 of those people. I've sent messages, we've talked on spaces, or we've shared each other's stuff and had some type of interaction. But most of the people, they came into a space over the time that I was doing spaces in various different spaces, whether it was Counterpoint, whether it was on Herc Santos's stuff, or popping into there's quite a few, but those were the main ones that I was listening to. I haven't listened to Sonny Johnson in a while on X, but if she's on Sirius Radio and X, and she's a profound mind. I really need to get back to listening to her show on Monday on X. And I don't have Sirius Radio right now, but I would love to get her. But there's a lot of good people out there getting info out, but there is a lot of static. We talked about that in the podcast when we talked about the signal needs to always be greater than the static. There's a lot of static right now in the political arena, in the entertainment arena, and we, in our venture to rehumanize each other and to take control of our civics and get this situation taken care of where we get rid of these career politicians and we balance the budget, we really, really, really have to start having conversations. And that's another thing that I'm just thinking about is that in some of these situations that I'm in with these conversations, when we're talking about very serious subjects, I'm concerned that some of the sentiments that get echoed get attached to me, or someone's even said while we're on the air, like, and I'm sure Tony agrees, and then I go to chime in, and so a couple other people talk, and the topic goes a different way, and I never got to chime in on air and say, Tony doesn't agree, and I'm not pointing fingers or giving any blame on that, but that's something that can happen in a live show, and if you haven't pre-talked about things and ask somebody to say, hey, don't like, give me a chance to say whether I do or not, because I got to figure out where I can contribute in these other places. But when it comes to my message of what I'm trying to say, the things I'm trying to communicate, and the people that I'm trying to draw in, I need to get back to my product, get back to civil intercourse, and really make sure that I stay on brand and make sure that my words are clear and make sure that people understand, because let's get out of the static, guys. Let's get into the signal. When we kicking off into this new year, let's start off with the bang. Let's start off with being focused. Let's start off with being able to get into a situation where we are focused on actions. We are focused on the things that we agree on, and put aside the things we disagree on for just a minute, and let's take care of the things we agree on. And I hope that we agree that everyone needs more money in their pocket, and it should come from tax cuts, and that we do need to cut programs. But what we need to do is cut the programs that are wasting money, which is a lot of programs. There's a lot of money. The Doge thing barely touched anything, and but they uncovered quite a bit, and there is so much more out there. You don't need Doge. You can just read the budgets. They're public. As a matter of fact, right now I'm going to throw in a clip from one of the podcasts that we did a few years back when we were $32 trillion in debt. Here's Senator Langford.
Last year, the State Department did a grant to Ecuador to host 12 drag shows in Ecuador with American tax dollars. Now, may have different opinions in this room on drag shows. I'm just asking the simple question: is the best use of American tax dollars to actually fund drag shows in Ecuador with U.S. tax dollars? I don't believe that it is.
Keep in mind, when he says tax dollars, he's talking about debt. Every time a politician says, hey, we're going to spend $500 million on this, we're going to spend $50 million on this, we're going to put $10 million, we're going to put $20 million. Every time they pledge to spend money, they're pledging to borrow money and to have you pay the interest on it. That is where your tax dollars go, is to debt. And eventually at some point we'll be past it. But we'll get to that in the next segment. But let's continue on with this clip.
National Science Foundation last year did a study of butterflies in Europe. So we funded with American taxpayer dollars a butterfly study in Germany where we paid a Swedish scientist to study butterflies in Germany. I'm not real sure why American tax dollars, that was the best use of that, but that was one of the grants that was done last year. Last year, there was also a NEA grant that was done to set up a display in Brooklyn for the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which, by the way, is not even an American band, and I'm not sure why we had to pay federal tax dollars to be able to do that. My simple question is always, why are tax dollars being taken out of Oklahoma to be able to do that? Always popular. We had an almost, $350,000 grant to study smart toilets. Was one of the grants that we actually paid for with our federal tax dollars last year. We also had a grant that was done studying colonial Mexican soundscapes. Now, I'm sure colonial Mexican soundscapes are fascinating, but we paid for a researcher to travel to Mexico and then to be able to write a series about the sounds of colonial Mexico and how they could be used to be able to influence communities.
So let me stop here again. Now, you can argue whether some of these are good, and we need to debate whether we want to give to artistic ventures, but we definitely need to clean up the rolls. And these are some very questionable spending measures when we're at that time, $32 trillion in debt. So, but this next one coming up is particularly interesting because it absolutely positively had no reason to be done at all. But, you tell me what you think.
We last year did a study on helmets and seatbelts in Ghana to be able to study whether seatbelts and helmets were effective for saving lives in Ghana. Can I just go ahead and answer that question for free? Seatbelts and helmets are a good idea. They save lives. Free. I can go ahead and give you that advice. How do I know that? Because we've already spent millions of dollars in other studies here in the United States, but instead we spent money in Ghana studying helmets to see if they're actually a good idea there. And amazingly, they discovered, yes, they are. There was also a grant that was done last year. I've got to just walk this one through. This was at the Springfield Museum of Art in Missouri. There was a grant to be on a display, an installation in the exhibit in the museum called Yoko Ono Mend Piece. Now let me just read this to you. It's a simple white room where shattered cups and saucers are placed on a table, and participants are asked to mend the fragments together using common household items like twine, glue, scissors, and tape, and the resulting works are displayed on nearby shelves as evidence of the power of collective action. Again, I'm not opposed to fixing broken saucers in a public place and displaying them. All I'm asking is, why did Oklahomans work overtime last year to pay their tax bill to fund doing the Yoko Ono White Room where people fixed broken saucers? I don't have a good answer for that yet, by the way. I'm still trying to be able to get that. If you like wine country, great, you help pay for it. One of the highest income areas in the world is Napa Valley, California. One of the highest income areas in the entire world. The good folks of Oklahoma helped pay for a wine pedestrian trail through Napa Valley because apparently Napa Valley didn't have enough cash to be able to pay for the 8-mile walking trail through wine country, some of the most expensive real estate in the entire world. So the taxpayers in Oklahoma had to pay for that wine country tour trail. If you like traveling to Hawaii, enjoy the trip. When you get there, if you go to a farmer's market, you'll find out that you helped pay for that farmer's market because the farmer's market in Hawaii received $3.4 million to be able to fund the farmer's market. If you go to New York City and pay a very high dollar ticket to get into a private location in the Metropolitan Opera to be able to watch the opera, you will feel safer, I'm sure, when you go to the Metropolitan Opera because almost $750,000 was given to the Metropolitan Opera in New York to help them install a new fire suppression system with federal tax dollars.
Now I'm going to chime in here once again. Keep in mind, this is not our tax dollars, as he keeps saying. We are going to borrow this money and spend it like this. And the taxpayers are going to be on the hook for this debt. Now, keep in mind, they make a budget. The money doesn't exist. They turn to the Fed. The Fed says, okay, you've created debt. We will now create money. We will now create inflation. We will now weaken the dollar. We will now reduce your ability to have buying power in America and anyone else who utilizes American dollar. That's a much deeper well. We'll get into it later. But tax dollars, borrowed money. Borrowed money. Is this a good use of our money? Keep in mind, we're $38 trillion in the debt. Even with this big, beautiful bill, it is going to generate a lot of revenue. It's going to kickstart things. But we still have to, at this point, become fiscally minded. It's going to add $1 trillion something to the debt. And that may even be a lower estimate. we are entrenched in a system where we just do wasteful spending. And again, Doge got exposed a lot, but there is so much of this. It's public. You just need to dig in and look into it. And I'll continue the clip because some of these are kind of interesting and they're silly. One of them was a little bit unnerving, but yeah, let's carry on.
If you like traveling to Paris and you go to a butcher shop in Paris, you may be fascinated to know. Since the 13th century, apparently butchers in Paris have come up with their own private language. It's like a super secret private language among butchers in Paris. Fascinating for the French to study, but unfortunately, the American taxpayers paid for a study of French butchers' private language for fear that it is diminishing and fading away. So the American tax dollars paid for this study in France to study the secret language of butchers in Paris. Can't tell you why.
Keep in mind, as he's going through and talking about these things, he's not getting into the sacred cows on his quote unquote team. He's not going into the great detail about the things that the Uniparty, covers up in this waste and the spending. He's not talking about the reality. He's saying tax dollars, and he is speaking properly and bringing these out, and it is very interesting. But there are things that he has voted for, and the Uniparty has voted for, and like he said, and he'll say later, it's a 10,000 page omnibus bill these days, and nobody has time to read it. And you are only going to be able to find that stuff when you go in and actually dig through and see what they're spending the money on. But again, it's all public information. But listen to this next one, because it kind of gets to the heart of me as a Christian, and it kind of ties into a lot of the themes that our billionaires have been pushing with the space rush and all these different types of human anatomy changes and DNA changes.
Come on, man.
This is debt, guys. And think of what this money is going to. As a person who is a Christian, you may not be a Christian, you may have another religion. That's totally fine. But think of this as the government doing this with your tax dollars. Check this out.
You may know the story of let me see if I can pull this out, the parable of the sower. It's a very famous biblical story, the parable of the sower. Well, this particular version of the parable of the sower was actually a little bit different. What your tax dollars paid for is actually an event that was done to teach climate futurism and to be able to use the parable of the sower from the Bible, but to reteach a new religion called earth seed, using the biblical story of the parable of the sower and talking about humanity's destiny to be able to leave Earth for other planets. It wasn't the writing of the book. It was a conference for teachers to make sure teachers know how to be able to teach this new version of the parable of the sower and about the religion of earthseed to their kids. That was done with your tax dollars.
That's a lot of nuts!
Yeah, so I just don't think that's a good use of our tax dollars. You let me know what you think. And these next ones are a little bit absurd. Again, should we be borrowing money to send this money to do these things?
There was also a study done in Ghana last year. Not only did we do one on seatbelt studies and helmet studies in Ghana, we also did an interview project that was almost $200,000 in Ghana to interview taxi cab drivers and truck drivers to ask them about how difficult driving has become with climate change. If it's harder to drive now in Ghana based on climate change, your tax dollars paid for that. And if you don't like that I'm discussing anything on climate change, and you may disagree with that, well, perfect, because there was also a fund that was done with your tax dollars and the National Science Foundation to study how to influence people that disagree on the issue of climate change, with a study that was done for $400,000, the study on pluralistic ignorance gaps in climate change, and to be able to determine how to speak to people, as the study says, who are ignorant on climate change, and to be able to re-educate them on that. So if you disagree on this issue, we're also studying how to be able to re-educate you on this issue.
Yeah, that's a little bit too dystopian for my taste. But let's let Mr. Larkin carry on. Senator.
Last year, we also spent $991 million on soft-sided facilities. Those are called tents.
Wait, what?
Last year, we also spent $991 million on soft-sided facilities. Those are called tents along our border in Mexico. Now, best estimates on this, there's about 2 million people illegally crossed the border last year. So if you run the numbers on it, we spent somewhere around $500 a person on the tent facility they were processed through just to travel across the border.
$991 million for tents. Are you kidding me? Tents. $991 million. Just let that sink in. Now, I'll go ahead and add to one of the last things that he says. We'll clip right to that because it's an important thing to know about these bills. I mentioned it earlier, but let's let the senator say it himself.
We did a multi-thousand-page omnibus bill at the end of last year that literally no one had read. No one. There were no committee hearings in the Senate on appropriations at all last year. And trillions of dollars were spent, and no one knows what they were spent for.
Now, that's stuff that you can find in every budget. You can just go look in there, and that was wild, right? There's money for a religion, all sorts of crazy stuff going on. We really need to have adult conversations about these things. We need to talk about our culture. America does have a culture, and we need to protect it. And we need to have it protected so not only for the citizens that live here, but for the people who do come here. They're coming here for the dream of America. And we need to make sure that when they show up, they get the dream, they don't get the nightmare. And we need to make sure that we are able to keep the peace without screaming for more tyrannical policing. We went through a situation where we pushed a bunch of good cops out, maybe even a few bad ones, and now we have a bunch of new hires and people who are trained on policies, and it was already a problem where cops didn't know about constitutional rights for citizens. But, we have a situation now where that's not being taken care of because we always get a situation going where there's static. Let's get to the signal. Let's get to rehumanizing each other. Let's get to becoming a country again. I know I'm being redundant, but it bears saying it twice. We have to get rid of these career politicians. We have to balance this budget for Pete's sake. We really, really do. And I really hope that your family, I don't even care if you're a liberal, if you're a conservative, if you're an anarchist, if you're whatever you are, what flavor you choose to roll with in life. You do you, but let's make sure that everyone has as much tax money not taken away from them so that they can have their own resources. The government doesn't need as much money as it takes from us. And we really need to kind of come and figure that out. I don't know. I don't want to say it's a pipe dream that income tax will go, but I am giddy about the fact that it's even being toted out there as some type of midterm campaign, jingle inside people's heads. It's nice that it's being said out loud. So I really hope that we go in that direction. Now, I've got a segment coming up that I'm going to toss to in just a second. It's a segment that we did in the October show. It goes over the way the economy is and why we're so addicted to this usury system that we're stuck in. And it's more of an entertainment minded thing, but it fits in with what I was talking about earlier when we were going through Larkin's clips. That money that they're spending, they're borrowing the money from the Fed after we create a debt situation, and they're hanging that on our kids. But we're kind of stuck in a cycle, and it's one of the best jobs I've done kind of describing that. So we'll do that, and then I'll meet you on the other side of that, and we'll say goodbye. It's a celebration of our debt, that debt that we keep continuing to build by those clips that we just went through, all that continued waste. And again, I'll say it again, and I'll say it again. It's all public information. You can go to the websites, the public websites, the government websites, and download those budgets and read them yourself. You don't need to worry about anybody giving you fake information and fake news. We have too much original source material to play that game. Enjoy this segment. I'll meet you on the other side. We are celebrating another major milestone. We have reached $38 trillion in national interest-bearing debt. Someone break out the celebratory music. Folks, get excited. It's the $38 trillion jackpot. Well, for the banking cabal anyway. Now, I have a very genuine question for you. Why do we, the people, love the banking cabal's golden chains so much? Why are we driven to be driven into the ground like good little worker piss ants? If you're interested in the answer to those questions, then grab a seat at the table. The real celebration is getting started.
Good evening, my fellow Americans.
And welcome to the Grand Gala of Fiscal Insanity 2025. Waiters, break out the champagne because our national debt just smashed through $38 trillion as of October 24th, 2025, per the Treasury's ticking doomsday clock. That's $114,876 per citizen. Enough to buy every one of you a Tesla Cybertruck and still have change for a lifetime of avocado toast. But this isn't really your debt.
What?
It's just on your tab.
What do you mean?
It's the banking cabal's masterpiece, a towering monument to the Federal Reserve's 1910 Jekyll Island plot, where robber barons like J.P. Morgan and their cronies birthed a bastard child into our economic system that's got us all dancing to their tune. Tonight, we're toasting to their triumph and our addiction to the glittering bait on a hook they've dangled in our faces for a century. Let's start by ripping the veil off. Now, the Fed's game is simple. The government craves cash for endless wars, bloated programs, or bridges to nowhere projects. It issues bonds, fancy IOUs, to the Fed, which prints dollars from thin air, literally to buy the bonds. No gold backing, just vibes and blind trust. Banks then amplify this magic money through fractional reserve lending, spinning $1 of debt into $10 of credit. The catch? This floods the system with new money, jacking up prices like a silent pickpocket. Inflation's no glitch. It's an intended feature of the system. Since 1971, when Nixon killed the gold standard, the dollar has lost 87% of its purchasing power. In 1960's burger cost a quarter. Now it's $7. Your savings? A slow motion heist. Interest payments on the debt? A cool $1.1 trillion this year, projected to hit $1.7 trillion by 2030, outstripping defense and crowding out Medicare. Taxes? They're the garnish on this corrupt dish, mostly siphoned to service the interest or feed the bureaucracy beast, not pave your roads or fix your schools. We borrow more money for that, creating debt, triggering more printing of money and more debt. So why do we plebs keep signing up for this usury scam? Because it's a hell of a drug. Look at the S&P 500. From 1995 to 2025, it's delivered a 9.8% annualized return, turning a $10,000 investment into $167,000 per Bloomberg data.
That's a lot of nuts!
That's 1,570% gain, juiced by cheap debt and Fed money pumps. Your 401k's fat. Your portfolio is popping. Feels like winning, right? Then there's housing. In 1995, the median home costed $130,000. Today, it's $412,000, a 217% leap. You own a home, but really, you're leasing it from the bank via a 30-year mortgage and from the state via property taxes. $1.6 trillion collected nationwide in 2024, up 6.7% from last year. So true ownership? A pipe dream unless you're sitting on paid-off land free from the county's annual shakedown. Compare that to 1800s homesteading. You worked the land, it was yours, no tax man knocking. Now? Miss a property tax payment and your asset gets auctioned. Yet we love it. Mortgages mean bigger houses. Fatter loans mean fancier cars. And deficit spending means government goodies. Short-term bliss, long-term shackles. The dark comedy of it all, we're all complicit. We cheer the stock market highs, knowing they're built on debt bubbles that will certainly pop. Think 2008, but way meaner next time. We sign those mortgage papers thrilled to own a slice of the American dream while the taxman and banker hold the deed. Inflation's eating our lunch, 4.9% annualized over 30 years, but we're too busy binging Netflix on credit to notice.
Tell us how you really feel. Am I right?
Liberty's the real casualty. Every dollar printed tightens the Fed's grip, turning us into serfs of a system we can't quit. The ultimate control mechanism, and we're hooked on its perks. So here's to 40 trillion by 2026. When the next shutdown drama jacks the debt even higher, swallow that pill with a smirk, folks. It's bitter, but the high's too good to quit.
It's an addiction.
All right, so that's about it for now, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please, if you have a moment, please share this, especially if you got to this point. We need to end these career politicians. We need to balance the budget. We need to rehumanize. We need to reorganize, and we need to energize. Come on. We can do this. Let's start figuring out how to take back our local governments, our state governments, and our federal governments. We're going to have more conversations on that coming up. So please stay tuned and please become involved in the conversation. Look for opportunities to join in on Spaces and live events on Rumble. And please make sure you follow us and help us out by just being a part of the civil intercourse that helps make this great country what it is. Thank you. God bless you. Happy New Year's. Let's get to work. Be a builder, not a burner. Peace.
Well, goodbye.
Oh, yeah, that was fantastic. What a great time. Heaven. It was heaven.
What an eccentric performance.